Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
The seat taken.
Hey, Kiernan.
How you doing, Ryan? I tried to give it a kind of a Taylor Swift kind of spin. What do you think?
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
But it's befitting for what we're going to chat about today.
Yeah, we're talking about traveling for concerts, or as I like to call it, traveling, Taylor's version.
Roy.
We're going to have on Emma Weissmann, who is the managing editor of Travel Age West. And we're going to talk a bit about traveling for Taylor Swift and maybe traveling for other concerts. And yeah, it's going to be fun.
It's I was a little skeptical of the topic, Ryan, but then we asked listeners if they were interested, had a lot of people pouring in and saying, I've considered traveling, or I often travel to go to these music events. And so it's a great topic, a good get.
This just isn't an excuse to use Taylor Swift in the podcast description for our SEO benefit.
Well, if only you could get AI in there as well, traveling for Taylor Swift or AI. It would be a dream episode.
I had no idea how much people loved AI.
Well, we know it's mostly bots that are listening now.
That's true.
Now, Ryan, I don't want to jump too far in before we do the requisite Judy alert. This, of course, is our new reoccurring segment where, given that you've all but full-time relocated to South America, we're just all wondering where in the world you are. And this is for particularly your mother, Judy, who, by the way, sent me a lovely card recently congratulating me on the new travel book. So thank you for that, Judy. But also, Ryan, where in the world are you?
I am in Bogota today, but when this episode comes out, I will be in Lima, Peru.
Oh, interesting. I know. Longtime listeners will know. You must be going back to try to make right one of the great wrongs in our relationship.
This is literally why I'm going. I'm flying to Peru to buy you a capybara, a wooden capybara.
A wooden capybara sculpture. Ryan promised me he would get me. I didn't buy it when I was in Lima. I greatly regretted it afterwards. He said, "Oh, don't worry, I'll get it for you." Stopped on the way to the airport out, couldn't find it, had no time to ask for help or
no, that
really
is not
try.
True. I asked for help.
It was all bogus. I know exactly what happened because I know
audio.
you.
I have audio of this.
Yeah. Now, what is bringing you to Lima? Just pure tourism?
Yeah, I'm just basically I found a flight that was cheaper to fly through Lima than fly direct, and so I'm gonna.
How long will you be there?
Just for a few days. I'm going to eat a little bit and basically...
I hope you eat a lot. One of the great food cities of the world.
I know. I'm
very jealous of this.
I think Peruvian food has just risen up my favorite food rankings so much in the last few years.
That's very, Ryan, soon you're coming to Boston at the end of May, and we're going to have dinner together. I have my eye on a place that I love, Sarma. The reservations are already gone for that date, but there are two wonderful Peruvian places close by. So maybe
I'll be coming from Peru.
Lima, right? Well, you come to Boston for the Peruvian food, of course.
I thought you were going to take me to an Irish pub or something like you usually do, but yeah.
That is very exciting travel. So thank you, Ryan. Now, before we dig into, of course, Taylor and traveling for musicians, I do want to just have a quick discussion. Ryan, you and I, we often try to be very mindful about keeping politics off the podcast as much as we can. While you and I are two fairly liberal gentlemen, we met, of course. Our relationship began working together at a company called Blue State. We've got some choice reviews dragging us down on the Apple Podcast platform, where people say, "Oh, this podcast is full of woke hatred," and then you got woke people saying we're too conservative. We just can't get the balance right, it seems.
Yeah. And I don't know that this next bit's going to help us any.
Oh, I disagree with that. I very much disagree with that. So what I want to talk about, and what I want to make this is an official statement from the Out of Office, a travel podcast company. is there was recently an article in the Washington Post by a person named Daniel Rosen, who I think largely wrote this op-ed because he wanted to be able to put in his bio a graduate from Harvard, which is like the full description of his qualifications for the op-ed. And the op-ed is titled, "Harvard is an almighty mess. Let Mitt Romney clean it up." Ryan, I mean, and recently John Fetterman endorsed this position. So this is pleasing to both sides. You and I, of course, both great fans of the Mitt Romney. And so it's a very thoughtful take on the missteps and the controversies surrounding my alma mater. Ryan, I believe your alma mater as well.
You went to Harvard?
But you've spent plenty of time on the campus, I think, in the Lowell House, as you've mentioned.
I am a fan of Harvard. I spent a lot of time at HBS. I think you've been there as well. So. and Daniel Rosen, who I don't know, we don't all know each other. Daniel Rosen says he's a lifelong Democrat. He didn't vote for Romney for president. Well, there's your first misstep, Daniel. And he has no personal connection to him. And here I'm quoting, "I make this suggestion in the sincere and robust hope that he is someone who can navigate the university through painful but necessary reform and drive back the anti-Semitism that is tarnishing the institution's credibility." Further quote, "Romney's unique bridge building character is precisely what Harvard needs in an age of toxic polarization." And Ryan, I want to say I am on board with this suggestion. So hereby, Out of Office, a travel podcast, endorses Mitt Romney for the Harvard University presidency. Maybe we could even get him on. I would. I think it would be fun to get Mitt on, to get Senator Romney on. I as a much more minor member of the Harvard family, also endorse this idea, Kiernan.
We consider you a part of the family, Ryan. And where it gets a little more complicated might be the concluding sentence, which is Mitt Romney has what it takes to lead Harvard in once again engaging in the kind of open discourse needed for every student, regardless of race, religion, or orientation, to feel part of the university community. Of course, he's a very active member of the Mormon Church, which unfortunately feels that same-sex relationships are against God's doctrine. So I'm not sure about the orientation piece of that, but Mitt has threaded a lot of needles in his time.
Yeah, I wouldn't use Mitt's religion against him in this. I mean, and if that were the case, it'd be tough to get a Catholic to lead Harvard. And, fine point. And you're speaking as both a Catholic and a gay man, so you've got the most. So between you on the Catholic and the gay front, and me on the Harvard front, I feel like this endorsement, this is what's going to launch him to the top. I can feel it. Yeah, and thank you, Fetterman, for going out on the limb first, so we could do this. So maybe we'll get to visit Mitt Romney on campus. We'll call him President Romney then.
Finally get to call him President Romney.
He might take the job just for the title.
And you know what? If you're on board with this decision, you're not on board with this decision, head to Apple Podcasts and leave a review that lets us know. It'd be a great way for us to hear your thoughts on this.
As long as it's a 5-star review.
Exactly. You say anything you want in the comments, as long as it starts with a 5 stars.
So, Kiernan, before we jump into this interview with Emma from Travel Age, have you ever traveled for a concert?
I never really have. I'm not a huge concert goer, especially on like the pop culture side of things. I travel for musical theater, but I'm not sure if you're gonna qualify that.
I was gonna say, have you traveled to see a production of Follies in like North Carolina?
I've certainly traveled extensively to see musical theater, and when I am traveling, I will look if there's musical theater local to where I am, which I know is also a practice of yours.
Yeah, we'll talk a bit about that in the interview. So I think without further ado, it's time to take off.
Tell the cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
Welcome, Emma. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about traveling, Taylor's version, as I call it.
Love it. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So before we jump into Taylor Swift and traveling, tell us a little bit about yourself and the various projects you're working on.
Sure. So I'm the managing editor of Travel Age West. It's a magazine that serves travel advisors or travel agents. I think the mainstream public knows them as. And I've been at the magazine for about 9 years. I handle their digital strategy, and then I also host their 2 podcasts.
Fantastic. What are the names of those podcasts?
So I have Humans of Travel, and it's for people in the travel industry. It's a little bit like Armchair Expert, if you're familiar with that show. So I sit down, I do a one-on-one deep dive about somebody significant in the travel industry, their life, their career, the highs and lows, anything that kind of makes them human, to sort of give people their story behind the name. And then Trade Secrets is the second podcast, and we produce that in conjunction with Travel Weekly, which is the national newspaper of the travel industry. It's for travel advisors. So if you're not a travel advisor, I'm not sure how exciting it would be for you, but we have listeners call in with business questions, and then we invite a veteran travel agent on the show to answer them. So it takes up a lot of my time, but I love it. And I don't usually go behind the mic on the other side of things and answer questions. So I'm excited to do that now.
Yeah, great. So before we jump into talking about the business of Taylor Swift, can you talk a little bit about sort of your personal experience with Taylor Swift?
So I'm going to try not to go too long for this, because I know we're short on time, but I have been a Swiftie ever since her debut album. I kind of grew up with her. I'm 31 right now. So when she was going through things, whether that be friendships changing or breakups or falling in love, by the time her music came out about that period in her life, I was finding myself going through similar things. So I've always really liked her music. I saw her for the first time with the 1989 tour in 2014 in New York, and I've seen her ever since. So the Reputation tour, I went to Chicago, and then this most recent tour, the Eras tour, which is just exploding in popularity, I saw that in Los Angeles. So it's kind of fitting that we're talking about traveling for Taylor Swift, because I myself have traveled to 3 states just to see her.
That is fantastic. So you've seen Taylor 3 times more than me, but I will aim to see her soon, I'm sure. So can you talk a little bit about this most recent tour and how sort of Taylor is, really kind of like making people are planning their travel around Taylor Swift concerts. So just tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because we're seeing at the magazine that one of the biggest trends of 2024 centers around event travel. So maybe it's Taylor Swift and the Eras Tour, or maybe it's the Paris Olympics, or maybe it's the Formula One race in Las Vegas. People enjoy traveling and spending time with like-minded travelers. So in the case of Taylor Swift, with fellow fans, and then making a vacation out of it as well. It's an excuse to get together with friends and families, maybe do group trips like girls' getaways, and just really turn it into this memorable experience. I think fans a lot of times have really high emotions associated with their fandom. So this kind of checks all the boxes, right? It's a meaningful experience for them. They connect with whatever event they're going to because they're a fan of that thing. And it just is kind of a perfect combination of things to just explode in this event travel space. Another thing that we're seeing right now, especially when it comes to Europe, and she's going to head to Europe next month in May, airfare is really high right now, especially to Europe. So if people are going all the way there, they want to make their trips worth it. So maybe they'll come for the concert, but they're going to stay and explore Stockholm, or they're going to, hop on over to another country, since you can visit a lot of countries at one time in Europe. So we're kind of seeing them take this opportunity coming out of the pandemic to really just make the most of their trips. It's been fascinating to watch.
So I am a New Yorker mostly. I'm doing a remote year right now, but obviously when Taylor is in New York, those tickets are incredibly expensive and incredibly hard to get. Is part of this because it's slightly easier to see Taylor in Europe or South America?
I think a lot of people miss their chance in the US. So like you said, it's tough to get tickets. And we were so lucky to get the Eras tickets in Los Angeles. She had added one extra show and my fiance just hopped on it and he was able to get some nosebleed seats. We could barely see her, right? But it was just such a difficult time for people who wanted to see her. So I think this is their second chance. I'm not sure exactly how much easier it is to get them in an international destination, but I do know it was super, super hard in the US. So if you didn't get your chance, I think this presents a second chance in a way.
It's funny because I was in Mexico City when Taylor was there, and I could not figure out how to get tickets. And there isn't like a secondary ticket market in Mexico that's like legit. Like in the US, we have like things like StubHub or even Ticketmaster. You can buy secondary tickets. So I was scared to buy tickets, and I know that there's been incidents where they've a lot of scalpers have sold fake tickets, and I'm trying to remember who specifically. I can't believe I'm thinking about Bad Bunny. When Bad Bunny was in Mexico City, a lot of fake tickets got sold. So I didn't get to see Taylor in Mexico City, but it was a huge success for her, and it would have been so much fun to see her there. Now, I've read that when Taylor comes to a city, she actually provides like a boost to the local economy. Can you talk a bit about that?
Absolutely. So I'll use my own my home, Los Angeles, as an example. So when she came to LA, she played multiple shows and she gave the city an estimated 325 million economic bump. And the US Travel Association is estimating that her entire US tour could bring in as much as $10 billion. So I did some digging because I was just curious about this. And there was a survey done by Question Pro that showed that each concert goer for Taylor Swift specifically is spending an average of about $1,300. Now, like that's my portion of the rent. That's a really, really high number for just one show, right? So you want to know, like, why is this happening? And there was an article from NPR that talks about how what's driving all of this spending is the fact that most of Taylor's fans are women, are younger women. And this year, the share of American women who are working hit a record high. And, overall, urban younger women are doing really well. Under the age of 30, they're out earning or making the same amount as their male counterparts in 22 major metro areas. And again, this comes from NPR, and they were quoting a Pew Research Center analysis of Census Bureau data. So even though women overall nationwide earn less than men, the younger women who are predominantly Taylor's fan base are doing well, and they're spending the money and they have the money to spend. So there's so many different factors, but just from my own little research, that made sense to me. That resonated.
So you've got a couple different things happening here. You've got women are employed at record rates, are earning good money. They've got some income to spend. Taylor is the most famous person in the world right now. And so all this comes together to make these tours just massive, have a massive economic impact.
Exactly.
That's very cool. Now, I read, Emma, that you're going on a Taylor Swift cruise this year.
I am.
What's that
and I would love to tell you about it. So I don't know if you remember this, but about, I want to say last fall, there was this cruise that just went viral. It's on Royal Caribbean's Allure of the Seas. It's called the In My Cruise Era cruise. And all of the media outlets picked it up. They were blasting it out. There was a lot of confusion about whether Taylor was going to be on the cruise or if she was affiliated with it. So it's actually a travel agency that came up with the idea for this cruise. There's 3 travel advisors, all women, all Swifties, and they decided to block off about 200 staterooms on this big, massive ship and do a fan-led cruise. So Taylor's not affiliated with it. She's not going to be there, but it's just a place for fans to come together. There's going to be karaoke, friendship bracelet making, just Taylor-themed events. And they sold out. I mean, I think it was just in a day or two, they completely sold out of their staterooms. And that is also something that we're seeing at Travel Age West with travel advisors specifically. These are called affinity groups. So everyone has similar values, maybe similar interests. In this case, it's Taylor Swift's music. And so a study that we did showed that 33% of travel agents are already incorporating this type of trip into their business models. And if they're not already doing that, 43% are interested in doing so. So I wrote several articles about it. I did a podcast with the travel agency. And, I am so thrilled to be going. I can't wait. I'm bringing one of my college friends along who's also a Swiftie. So I will report back. But it's a really cool opportunity. And I think a lot of people, if you can't afford a Taylor Swift show or tickets, maybe this is another avenue that you can be with other fans and have a great travel experience as well.
And I know that this is something that, a lot of sort of affinity groups do, right? Like,
yes,
there's
exactly.
a Broadway cruise that I've had friends perform on, and there's that Star Trek cruise that I've seen a friend or two go on Instagram.
Yeah, there's cat lovers cruises. Yeah. There's jam cruises for jazz lovers. Like there's everything, all different types of cruises.
That's a really fun way to meet new people who share a similar interest. So that's very cool. So
Absolutely.
I was thinking back, about concerts that I've traveled for. So, when I was a teenager, I was a Rent head, which meant I went to see the Broadway musical Rent a lot.
Amazing.
And I would go to DC and Richmond, Virginia, and any place I could drive to from my hometown to see Rent. And now much time has passed, I've traveled to see Garth Brooks on tour. I took my mom to see Adele in Mexico City, which was fantastic. I went to see Paul McCartney in Mexico City. I think Mexico City is a great place to see a concert. I've had friends recently, I think, travel for Madonna's tour and Beyonce's. Can you talk a little bit more about this sort of as a larger trend?
So it's funny that you mentioned Beyonce, because I just saw in the New York Times that Beyonce's Renaissance tour generated about $4.5 billion for the American economy. We're already talking about these economic boosts, right? But that's as much as the 2008 Olympics did for Beijing. So it really kind of shows the power of the fan bases. And like you said, the desire to go see people in new cities. It's just fun. So I don't see this trend slowing down anytime soon. I think it just exploded with Taylor for all of the factors that I mentioned. And then also we're all coming out of the pandemic and we all want to get places. But it's not just the concert tickets that are adding the benefit to these places. When you travel somewhere, you might go see the show, but you're also going to be dining at restaurants. You're going to be staying at hotels. Maybe you're getting transportation. It's everything that makes up the travel experience that is, boosting the local economy. And that's not going to change. One thing that I forgot to mention, and I wanted to make sure that I did that, is that tour operators and tourism bureaus, like a tourism board, they're jumping on this trend, which is so smart from a business perspective. So they're planning offerings and products around concerts. In Taylor Swift's case, Visit Sweden is going to be putting out like different places that you can go to in Sweden if you're already going there for the Eras tour. And their flight searches were up by like 473% for the period that she's going to be in town. And then there's another operator I wanted to mention called Tours by Locals. And they have tour options that range from, 9-hour tours dedicated to Taylor, 3.5-hour tours that are just highlighting every spot referenced in her London Boy song. So it just kind of goes to show how many different people in a community this could benefit.
Yeah, and I can imagine the restaurants are doing Taylor-themed dinners on the nights of her concerts and all sorts of things. So
if they're smart, they are. That's for sure.
Well, that is so interesting, and I think there are probably some really big tours going to come out this year and next year. I'm going to see more of this trend. And is there anything that I didn't ask you that you really wish I had?
I love when you ask that question because I ask all my guests that question as well. And no, I think you did a great job. I think we covered it, and, you know, love her or hate her, there's no denying how powerful her influence is. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on and talk about it. If you want to learn more about travel advisors or affinity groups, I would love to connect with your listeners. So feel free to send me an email. My door is always open. That's E. Weissmann with 2 S's and 2 N's. It's WEISSMANN at travelagewest.com. And I'd love to chat with you.
Fantastic. Well, we'll put that in the show notes so folks can find it easily. Thank you so much, Emma, for coming out and chatting with us about Taylor Swift. And now it's time for the last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
All right, Ryan. Well, we're here in the last stop. A great interview. So a lot of thanks to Emma Weissmann for opening our eyes. My God, the amount of money that comes. I mean, between Taylor and Beyonce, and of course, when Out of Office, a travel podcast, does our live shows. I mean, we're keeping this world economy going.
Do you think that we should do one of those cruises, like Out of Office, with all of our fans, like on a cruise,
It'll be you,
yeah.
me, your mom, my mom.
I can never get my mom on a cruise.
Okay, so it'll be you, me, my mom.
Yeah, a very small boat is what we're going to need for that.
Well, Ryan, this is the final segment of the show, the last segment of the show. It's why we call it the last stop. It's my favorite segment. It's your favorite segment. It's popularly known as the people segment. And that's because it's a time for us to come together to share of ourselves as a community. And we could share anything. It could be a memory, a story, a tale, a tall tale, a small tale. Could be a beaver's tale that you got as an artifact from a trip to Canada. It could be a recommendation. It could be a link. It could be an anecdote. It could be any of these things, but it must meet one criterion, which is that it must inspire the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workaday week. So I'm going to ask you, Ryan, as I ask you every episode, do you have a last stop this week?
I do, Kiernan. You know that I'm a big reader, right?
I know that you carry around a great amount of books, and one of your arms is substantially more muscular because you carry very big, heavy books, hardcovers that I think you've gotten on discount. And I've never actually seen the binding cracked, but I do believe in osmosis.
Yeah, no, I consider myself a reader. I consider myself a travel reader, you know?
You consider yourself lots of things.
I identify as a reader.
Just earlier in this episode, you identified as a Harvard family member.
I think that's connected to my reading. You know, I like to read books that are relevant to places that I am traveling. So for instance, when I started visiting Colombia, I read a lot of Colombian literature and history, et cetera. And, you know, planning for my trip in June to El Salvador, which would be my first time there. You know, I'm starting to curate a reading list of what I'm going to read for those 3 weeks. So, you know, it struck me as sort of interesting when I saw this article in Esquire about the rise of literary travel. And, you know, we talked with Emma a bit about the Taylor Swift cruise that she's going on. In that sort of same vein, the author of the book Gone Girl hosted a big cruise a couple years ago where folks could participate in, like, you know, crime stories, and they woke up with blood on their beds and stuff like this. It was like a whole Gone Girl true crime experience. You know, I didn't know about that until I read this article in Esquire. But what's really fun here is that some hotels are kind of starting to cater to readers. And there's this thing called Pages in Paradise that happens in the Dominican Republic. And let me just read you a bit about this experience. The programming kicked off even before check-in. Ahead of arrival, guests could log into the resort's app to reserve beach reads from an on-site library. Housed in the airy hotel lobby, the collection included buzzy contemporary fiction and all sorts of other stuff. Guests can also order books via room service anytime, or select from one of the library carts at the adults-only pool. And the property's various bars featured the Pages Pour, a specialty cocktail themed to the program's inaugural Book of the Month selection, a novel called Holding Pattern. So The article is basically about how a lot of resorts and Airbnbs and are starting to sort of cater themselves to being a, hey, come have your reading vacation here with us. What do you think about that, Kiernan?
I mean, mostly I'm this idea of room service seems so ridiculous.
It says room service or personal butler, which I don't even know what that means. But
I mean, presumably someone to read to you, right? I mean, that's all I would think.
That seems nice. Yeah,
that does seem nice.
Yeah,
I could see you staying in one of these places and just ordering book after book after book, just stacking them up outside your door so that people thought you were reading them all.
Well, the thing is, like, how many books can a person possibly read?
Well, that's what I mean. That's why it seems so crazy. Also, you get a Kindle. That's that's exactly
don't get a Kindle.
Kindles are okay.
I don't like Kindles. I'm anti-Kindle.
I don't like them that much, but they're very, when you're traveling, they are it's a great way to not have to always check a bag like you do. I assume half of that giant suitcase is books.
Not half. The other half is vitamins. Is your book going to be on Kindle?
Is my book going to be on Kindle? Golly, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know about Kindle and I don't know about audio. I'm just trying to get the darn thing out. It's actually the final edited version is due this weekend. I have 2 more days to finish my edits.
Well, I hope nothing new has opened in Boston since
1780. I did one minor change I had to make. I had written about the USS Constitution's modest museum, and they've actually totally redone it since I wrote that. So I had to take the word modest out.
Oh, well, that's a good thing. At least it's gotten better, not worse. You know,
you know what? I liked the old one. But it's fine. It's fine either way. The ship is the main thing. You and I went to that together, in fact.
I liked the ship. That was cool.
It was very fun.
Do you bring a last stop for us this week?
I did indeed. So I've been booking some Airbnbs recently. Ooh. And do you use Airbnb like lately?
I'm living in an Airbnb. I booked for months at a time in Bogota.
See, I don't know if it's only in US listings, but the fees really have become insane. Like between the state fees and then the fees for the platform and then the cleaning fees, which are often as much as a night at the place. It's like getting to hotel levels if you're renting a smaller place.
Yeah, I've noticed that in a lot of cities that Airbnb has definitely gotten more expensive. And when I look opposite hotels.com, sometimes it'll be like just easier and about the same price to stay in a hotel.
Yeah, I'm seeing the exact same thing. And so now for me, and this is great for listeners who have families, like one of the appeals of Airbnb is that I can get 2-3 bedrooms for, I can have a bedroom. My wife can have a bedroom and each of the kids has a bedroom.
Right. This is like how the Romneys have to travel.
Oh man, I was pitching you up for exactly that joke. And so, no, but the kids sleep better with separate bedrooms. So I want 3 bedrooms. Ideally. And I've been getting frustrated by all these excessive fees. But I've recently been looking, there's some coverage of new platforms that are emerging in this space who see a business opportunity. The 2 main platforms right now online are Airbnb and VRBO. And there's a new one that I find very interesting. I have not used it yet, but I'd be very interested in hearing from anybody if you have experience with this. It's called B&B Finder, and they do BNB the same way Airbnb does. So really going directly at the brand.
That's from Finder. Bed and Breakfast, right?
I know that, Ryan. Yes, I know.
Not like they invented.
I understand, but that's a key part of their brand. All right. And it describes itself as a book direct marketplace, which is kind of how Airbnb used to say itself. And it does not have added fees or commissions. And so, right, like from the quoted price up front, what it's going to cost for your full stay. You don't have to wait until that last screen. Yeah,
Airbnb will do that.
Shocked.
You'll see it's like $95 a night, and then you click, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, how is it $600 for 4 nights?
This is exactly, I think, the problem. And for B&B owners, they actually get more money because it goes directly from them because there's not a site fee. And of course, this is all going to change. All these sites, they all end up charging fees because you got to have a company. But for now, it seems like B&B Finder.
You got to have a company.
Yeah. You got to have a company. And B&B Finder, I think, is entering this space and trying to grab some market shares. And this is a great way to get deals. So I would recommend check it out. if you have experience without it, if you've had experience with B&B Finder, shoot us an email, outofofficepod@gmail.com, or slip into our DMs on the Insta, which is @OOO podcast. Those are a little different, the email handle and the out of office handle. It's just to make sure we've got the most savvy and smartest of listeners.
We like to keep
really
our
good
listeners
branding there.
Yeah, keep our listeners on their toes.
But I would really like to know if the experience is similar to the Airbnb experience, and whether it has all the same kind of protections that Airbnb has grown over time. And I think I'm going to try this out the next time Airbnb is looking a little too pricey.
You've never used a Mr. B&B?
No, it's Mr. B&B.
It's the gay Airbnb.
Is that real?
Yeah, it's real. Yeah.
Don't tell Mitt Romney.
So Kiernan, I hear next episode you're going to somewhere in South America that I haven't even been.
No, I'm creeping your way into Central America, Ryan, and talking about Guatemala. This is a place that Catherine and I visited a few years back, and an interesting and complicated place to visit. So we're gonna dig into kind of a Guatemala 101 if you're considering going there, what the tourist track looks like in Guatemala.
That sounds fantastic. Until then, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
The seat taken.
Can we have Mitt on to talk about Salt Lake City travel? Or
I mean, I think that Mitt, we should name him the president of Out of Office, a travel podcast.
You would turn this into a company.
Exactly. That's true enough.